Hello, everybody. Welcome back to You Can't Win. This is Tom here, and I'm joined by Don as usual. Today, we are going to be talking about, kind of this and that. I think a lot of the books that we've been reading lately and TV shows and that kind of stuff. And this is going to be a public episode, isn't it, Don?
Yeah, I guess so. Yep.
Yeah, so we're trying to get back into the habit of publishing these episodes on the public feed. We've been keeping up our output on the Patreon feed, and I've been doing some stuff about Muslim history, and Don has been doing stuff about economics and various things like that here and there. So if you absolutely need your You Can't Win content every week, that would be the place to go. But we do intend on ramping this up. Just been health issues and various things have kind of kept us away from this.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, without further ado, I guess I will talk about some of the stuff I've been reading this month. I feel like I'm slowing down a little bit these days, but I have been reading up a storm. So I guess one of the more notable things that I read earlier was The Confessions of Young Törless. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's got 2 dots over the O. That's by Robert Musil. That was Robert Musil's first book. And it's sort of like it's pseudo-autobiographical, I think. It's about these kids, like high school age or so, that are in a military boarding school in Austria.
Mm-hmm.
It was published in 1906, and it's basically set around that time. And it's pretty interesting. It kind of, what happens is there's like a group of these friends. The narrator is one of them, and they start to kind of like pick on one of the people in this group, one of the kids, and he ends up being like the whipping boy, like everyone just kind of picks on him. Everyone starts to abuse him more and more, and it gets really extreme towards the end. And each of the different friends in the group sort of has like their own approach to how they abuse this kid. So one of them is very brutish and tries to just like physically dominate him. The narrator is more like psychological, and it's kind of interesting because you can kind of see that these people they're sort of using him and exploiting him for their own like growth, or their own, like, they're kind of creating their identity and their self-image and stuff by abusing this person.
Mm-hmm.
And even the victim of the abuse doesn't really push back too much. Like, he is sort of coming into his own at the same time. So it's a little unpleasant, but I feel like it sort of fits in with a lot of stuff that I've been reading about this, with all the Franklin scandal PTK stuff that we were looking at last year, and books like The Catholic School by what's his name, Albinati, who talked about these things in Italy in the 70s, kind of similar sorts of stuff. I don't like to read this sort of thing all the time, but it is pretty fascinating to me, and I think it sheds light on how our society functions from a certain angle, kind of like the
Mm-hmm.
more interpersonal and psychological ways that these dynamics play out. So it's very well written. It was pretty short and pretty quick read. I think it was less than 200 pages and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it was also kind of in anticipation of reading The Man Without Qualities, which is his massive unfinished novel.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of wanted to read this to sort of just get a taste of Musil. I also bought a collection of essays that he wrote. So The Man Without Qualities is very essayistic. He just has chapters that are pretty much just straight up essays, speaking directly to you. So, he's a very interesting thinker. I really like the way he approaches things. He's a big critic of the idea of the way that modernity sort of boils down reality into a binary of there's just one answer, there's one explanation for things. He's always trying to maintain the multiplicity of possibilities and of meaning and things like that. So ultimately he kind of fails to do this, I think. I mean, I haven't read the book yet, but that's what people say about The Man Without Qualities, is that ultimately he can't finish the book because World War II starts and Hitler takes over, and there's all that kind of like throws everything.
Yeah.
He's trying to like explain what's happening at the turn of the century, explain what happened with World War One and the aftermath, and then World War II starts, and it's sort of like well, okay, never mind.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I would recommend it. Just know what you're going and getting into. It's not necessarily like super pleasant reading.
Yeah. Is that like?
Not,
yeah.
Go ahead. What
is that like more upper class kind of thing? Is it sort of? Like,
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
yeah, they're like upper class
yeah,
kids.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think he came from a fairly wealthy background. He I don't think like an actual aristocracy, but military upper class.
Sure.
And that maybe there's something here about like, because my family on my American side is a military family, not like upper, like they weren't officers or anything. Like maybe my dad would be classified as an officer. Anyway, yeah. I feel like I understand the military family dynamics a little bit that he talks about. Like I can kind of like relate to that somewhat. So, not the abuse stuff, just
sure,
just like the certain obsessions with like discipline and honor and all this kind of stuff. Sure. That's kind of the background of it.
That's cool.
Yeah, another short book that I read was The White Castle by Orhan Pamuk, the Turkish novelist. Yeah. I wanted to read this in Turkish and give it a shot. It was a little bit too difficult, so I just went ahead and read the English translation.
Yeah.
This was okay.
Sorry, just to interrupt. Like you...
Yeah.
You... I don't know if people know this, but you speak a bit of Turkish. Like you do... Like, we don't talk about that much, but, like, you've, like, taken years of courses in it and stuff, right? So,
yeah, I did, like, 2 or maybe 3 years. Yeah, whatever my college length, I did Turkish lessons throughout. And, yeah, I try to keep up with it. Like, I watch Turkish movies and stuff, and I can usually understand a fair bit of it. I used to be able to read a bit more. Like, I think when I was in university, I would have been able to read this. Like, we were reading... I remember they used to assign us articles from the magazine Radical, which is like a far left magazine. I think the TA sort of like was, had some choice in that. And we were supposed to like read it and write our responses to it and stuff. So, yeah, I have that level of fluency, I suppose. But this was it was a little too much. The thing with like, if you're reading a novel, like if you kind of get it, that's not always enough, and
for sure.
Sometimes you're not really getting as much out of it if you're like, well, I can understand half of what's being said here.
Yeah.
Like,
I find that too with French. Like I can read Wikipedia pages in French easily. Like it's not like I could read them, not as good as English, but like I can. Like, if I need to know something about a French political party or something like that, I can easily read those. But if I tried to read a novel, I'd have no idea what was going on, basically. Like, not really at all. Like, it would take me way too long and stuff. So, yeah, I get what you mean exactly. Yeah. So,
yeah, it is something that I would like to be able to do. I would like to, like, improve my Finnish to the point where I could read more, maybe not necessarily, like, high literature or something, but just to increase my fluency there. Turkish would be nice too. And then, like Arabic and Persian, all the kind of Islamic languages and all that sort of stuff. But then German too, because there's a lot of, Musil is one, but there's like a lot of German literature it's just not as well translated into English.
Oh, really?
As like French or other things. So that would be cool too.
Yeah.
But, that's a lot. So I'm not really sure how far I'm going to get with all that.
Sure. Anyways, let's get back to the...
Yeah, so The White Castle. This is also another short book. And I thought it was just kind of... It seemed like maybe a fitting read for because of the history stuff that I've been doing. It sort of takes place during the 17th century, which is basically in the ballpark of what I've been talking about on those history episodes. And it concerns a Italian scholar who gets kidnapped by the Ottomans, and he's sort of like taken in as like the Sultan, like as a personal prisoner of the sultans. And it turns out there's a Turkish scholar, or at least someone in the court, who is like an identical twin. Like they perfectly resemble each other. And so what happens is that these two they kind of take a liking to each other over time, and they kind of are like grouped together and like asked to work on things together. And what ends up happening is they sort of like lose track of their identities and stuff, because you have this Italian who has this Western European knowledge and kind of cultural stuff going on, and then the Turkish man on the other side is sort of like the reverse. He's got this Turkish and Islamic sort of background, but they start to realize, like when they work on things like science or philosophy or whatever, that they come to the same conclusions. So it's sort of like it's like a commentary on the cultural exchange that happened during the period, and the way that these people, if you want to view it this way, they transcended their sort of cultural milieu and came to a more like universal understanding, but in the process also lost a sense of like who they are. So it was okay. It didn't hold my attention very well. Orhan Pamuk, I think, is kind of an overrated novelist. This is the second book of his that I've read. I read Snow, which isn't supposed to be one of his best ones necessarily, but it was I read it when it was kind of like hot. It was like the thing to read because it was like talking about fundamentalism and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
And it was just kind of a little shallow, to be honest. And I kind of have the same criticism of this. It's a fun read, but it's not there's not a lot to sink your teeth into, to be honest, especially given like he sets up this whole, it's like a very interesting premise, and then it just doesn't go very far with it.
Sure.
So I felt like this would have been much better as a short story, maybe in the style of like Borges, where it like talks about, it's like a fictionalized encyclopedic entry or something, like, and kind of like talks about this event because the premise is more interesting than the actual story, as it turns out.
Okay.
So I think someone like Borges does things where he thinks of a cool premise and then realizes, well, the book actually wouldn't be that, like, it's the premise that's interesting. So if I just tell people, oh, well, here's this book that was written and isn't that interesting, then it kind of works. So, so that's how I kind of felt about that.
Sure. Yeah, I think I own this book, White Castle. I think it might be somewhere in my weird big pile of books that I collected. Because I used to I still do, but like, if I can get a book cheap that looks interesting or something like that, like half price or something, I end up just piling on a lot of them. So it might be there. So maybe I'll read it one day. We'll see. But yeah.
Yeah, it's a quick read. So yeah, if you're just wanting to read something like that,
sure.
I think I just read it in a few days or something.
Sure.
Let's see. I'll try to go through this a little bit quickly here. I've been reading a ton of the nonfiction, a lot of history stuff. I plan on doing a kind of like maybe like an annotated bibliography for all the sources I've been using for the history episode. So I won't go into much of that now. But one book I do want to mention actually is God's Unruly Friends by Ahmet Karamustafa. This book it's just a hoot. Like, it's very scholarly and dry, but the stuff that it's presenting is very fun and interesting. So it's talking about the kind of culture of dervishes in the, I would say like 13th to 16th century, something like that. Which it's the people that I talked about in the most recent history episode, if you've listened to that. And this goes into more depth than I go into there, but it just shows you like how wild some of these guys really were. And, they were like imitating animals, going around naked, living just under the, like without shelter, without any employment, without any wealth of any kind. They would just wear rags. They would have like bones in their hair and like teeth necklaces and like all kinds, just like the craziest kind of stuff. And it's just fun. I don't know. I find that kind of stuff really fun. It's also very interesting to me in terms of how similar a lot of maybe beliefs or practices are that they have, compared to like nomadic people on the steppe, and even some Zoroastrian groups. So there was like this group of Zoroastrians called the Kuramites, which they kind of did like a takia thing for a long time, where they went into hiding and they maintained their practices, but they weren't like public about it.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever groups tend to do that, the beliefs and stuff start to change. You know, they're kind of like isolated, and it starts to kind of develop by its own logic, without reference to a lot of other things. So things have a tendency to get a little strange, and you just see a lot of the same ideas and the same practices prevalent with these dervishes as much as you do with those other groups. So it's kind of a cool like hybrid thing that occurs there, where it's like a combination of shamanism, Zoroastrianism, and Sufism of various sorts, to create these crazy people that think they're like birds and dogs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's just really fun. I don't know.
Sure.
I think it's fun to read about that stuff.
That's cool.
Okay, so I will just mention one more, which is The Childhood of Jesus by J.M. Coetzee. So I've been on a big Coetzee spree this past year or so. I've read, I think, most of his books at this point, maybe a little over half, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of his most recent. He wrote this trilogy. It's like The Childhood of Jesus, the Education of Jesus or something, and then The Death of Jesus. It's not about Jesus. It's about
okay, yeah.
It's a weird book. It's hard to explain what it's about exactly. I guess it's about a man and a boy who arrive at this island, and the boy had a letter that was tied around his neck that was supposed to be a kind of document that said who his parents were, and he was trying to find his parents on this island. But the letter got lost on the ship. So this man decided that he needed to help this kid out and help find his mother when they get to the island.
Mm-hmm.
So he does that, but this island is strange. So they basically give him no... They say that they have a room for him, but they don't give him the key. They say somebody else has the key. We don't have it yet. So he has to like just do this makeshift shelter for the both of them, and he ends up getting work at the docks, and he is just loading up, or he's unloading ships, like grain from ships. He's just loading, like taking big bags of grain off of these ships every day, all day, and that seems to be the major source of work on the island. Like they don't really seem to do anything except these bags of grain and make bread, and then they eat bread, and that's basically all that really happens there. Everybody on the island has over time lost all their memories of their previous life, so they're all living in this sort of historyless, almost cultureless zone on this island.
Mm-hmm.
And the boy starts to get into trouble because he likes to interpret things his own way. Like they get a book, like a child's version of Don Quixote from the library, and he reads it. And so, Don Quixote is about this guy who imagines windmills to be giants, right? And
Mm-hmm.
he's got this sidekick, Sancho, who is telling him like, that's not a giant, that is a windmill. You're imagining things. You've read too many novels about knights and that kind of stuff, and now you're seeing it in reality. The child who's reading these books agrees with Don Quixote. He actually disagrees with Sancho. He says they are giants, and everyone is trying to tell Don Quixote that they're not, and that they're windmills, but they're wrong. They are giants.
Sure, yeah.
And then he starts to disagree with his math teacher, so he kind of like creates his own way of doing math and arrives at answers like 2 + 2 = 5 kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that gets him into so much trouble that they want to send him to this like a disciplinary school, like a camp for kids that is surrounded by barbed wire and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, it's an interesting book. It's pretty funny at times because it kind of felt a bit like a Samuel Beckett thing, where there's in terms of like the absurdity of it and the sense of humor that comes through, where they have these philosophical discussions about like very basic reality that nobody really is like a reliable witness to reality.
Mm-hmm.
So they just sort of argue with each other about things that sort of make sense, but no one can confirm anything. So anyway, I enjoyed it. It is, I think if you like Coetzee, you'd like it. If you don't, then I guess you wouldn't. I don't know. Kind of one of those things.
Sure. Does it you're finished it now? Like does it like reach some sort of like conclusion or something? Or just strange the whole way kind of thing?
No, there's definitely like plot. Like it's a really like tightly written book in terms of like things are always happening. There's always something to kind of, plot points that are moving you forward. So yeah, it does kind of arrive at a certain point. I don't want to spoil the ending or anything. But,
sure. Okay.
This is the first book of 3. I plan on reading the other 2. This also wasn't too long. So I've just been reading like a lot of these shorter books because most of my attention, I guess, has been on like the history stuff. I've been really like, I think I've read something like 20 books, or at least used 20 books for those episodes. So that's been really taking up most of my attention as far as like books and stuff goes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's one book I'm reading right now that I will certainly talk about when I finish it, because I think it's a very good you can't win type of book. And that is The Great Weaver from Kashmir by Halldór Laxness. He is a Icelandic novelist, or was. I think he's passed now. And I think he won a Nobel Prize as well. And this is his first novel. And I'll just shortly, describe it.
Sure.
It's about a poet who kind of memes himself into various ideologies and stuff. So first he's like one of these art will save the world, art is the highest concern of humanity kind of guys, and he's sort of like up in the clouds about that. And then he slowly transitions into socialism and communism and being very excited about that, and then he sort of drifts from there into other things. So he goes through like a nihilist phase, he goes through a Catholic phase, all kinds of different things. So it's really quite fun because it's like, oh, this guy is just speed running politics, like Twitter politics in the 1950s as an Icelandic kind of guy. So
that's funny.
Yeah, so that's been good. I'm almost done with that one, and maybe we'll talk about that at more length later.
Sure.
But yeah, as far as books go, that will sort of do it for January.
Sure. Yeah. So, I guess, I've been trying to, I don't know, for reading, I keep trying to start like longer books, and I'm not really, I don't know. I think maybe, I don't feel this on the surface, but maybe they feel daunting or something like that, like just the longer ones. Like I started
like historical or theoretical type of stuff.
There's a bunch of ones. I have a bunch of different like tech ones and stuff, like different like introduction to data science kind of stuff, and like Linux and different like tech stuff. And I don't know, like just sitting down to read a textbook is kind of hard when you're feeling like a bit like vaguely sick or something like that, or like just different things. It's kind of like, oh, I'm just going to read about like commands to enter into a terminal for an hour or something like that kind of thing, So
yeah,
I did what I did yesterday was I started to read like a short book, and it actually did work for some reason kind of thing. Like I read about half of a book by Joan Robinson about economic philosophy, which is just basically like a series of short articles about different approaches to economics, but from like a theoretical high level kind of thing. And so she was like a socialist that took Keynesian ideas and kind of ran with them a bit. And she was also like very, very respected for most of her life. And then at the end, she kind of became like a fan of Maoism and North Korea and stuff. And but she was like, it's interesting because she was I'm pretty sure that it's either Oxford or Cambridge, one of them. I think Cambridge. She's a professor at, and or something like that. And she's very much like English, like I'm not sure about like aristocracy, but like that kind of like well educated. A lot of her influences in the book it's kind of interesting because she kind of draws on like English traditions and stuff kind of thing. Like
Hmm.
Karl Popper, she like takes some of his ideas and stuff, and who was influential. I think he actually founded the London School of Economics. Maybe, I'm not sure, but he was influential there. And it's funny because she's like independently coming to these conclusions, basically, even though her upbringing is very contrary to that kind of stuff, basically.
Right.
And
Yeah.
she's very, very incisive. She can like, she's not willing to like take ideas just because they're popular or anything like that kind of thing. She can cut through the crap kind of a lot of the time. And she kind of, it's very, very funny to me because there's tons and tons of writing about economics where like people are like, I'm going to debunk this for you or something like that kind of thing, you know, or people that just are like, they think this is it. I don't know. I think that's like the same with any field with like theology or anything where it's like, they think that like the simplest arguments against them somehow demolish an entire thing. And she actually does that well, I think. Like she actually shows why a lot of the basic assumptions of like different economists, and she's doing it really at the beginning of this process kind of thing. Like she's writing, like this book came out in 1962, and I think, and this is just when the textbooks and stuff that were very influential on making everything basically like a mathematical model and making it like a very specific type of model, which just assumes everything almost already about competition and the government not interfering a lot and stuff like that. So she, at the start, she just goes, oh, I know what they're doing. I know their tricks, basically, kind of thing. And I think she's right about it, like most of it. Like she just, I don't know. So it's interesting to see her kind of get into it with some of the founding fathers kind of thing of modern economics and stuff. So, and yeah, and it's just it's interesting because she's kind of like quoting at length like Adam Smith and all these other people. So it's kind of, as I said, like it's drawing on like it's the sort of stuff that like English economists would talk about, like just the snooty ones kind of thing, you know, like would talk about if they were like diving into the history a bit kind of thing, or like being, you know, like adding flourishes or something. But she uses it basically to show how they would do stuff like build complex economic models on top of very, very flimsy foundations and stuff. So, and she's not like categorical all the time. Like she's also like, well, maybe this is useful in this situation or whatever kind of thing. But like, I don't know. So I'm only at basically her demolition of the old stuff kind of thing part, or like the classical kind of stuff. I have to get into now more her like discussing Keynes and his opinions on stuff, and like, you know, some of the more modern takes on like development and stuff. So, but she died in like 83 or something like that. She had a quite a long life and stuff. I remember that she was on, Milton Friedman had like a PBS. He had two of them actually, but like series on like economics, and like he tried to like create like this kind of chat show kind of atmosphere kind of thing. And she was actually on it, I think, and stuff. And like a lot of other, you know, like Donald Rumsfeld was on it and stuff. And I don't know, it was kind of funny, weird show. But anyways, so she had like, that was, you know, she had quite a long life doing this kind of stuff. So I don't know. I want to read all of her books and stuff and read all the stuff around this and stuff. So I don't know. That's one of my goals, I think, for this year, is to sort of get at a higher level on the economic stuff. Like, you know, kind of read through a lot of the basic stuff. I feel like I have enough at this point in my life where I'm like, I kind of know, like, I'm trying to think of like things that I can extend from what I already know, instead of like diving into whole new areas all the time and stuff. Like, and try to like actually become more of an expert in certain areas and stuff. And I feel like economics and stuff related to that is where most of my coursework is in and stuff. So maybe that's the easiest to, you know, kind of extend and kind of build up again towards like maybe getting a job eventually in that area and stuff. So yeah.
Cool. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of like TV and media and stuff, other than that, other than the books and stuff, is I watched the rest of the series Wolf Hall, which we had talked a little bit about a while ago, kind of like a long while ago, I think maybe at this point. But I finished the last like 3.5 episodes or something like that. There's 6, I think, or something like that. There's maybe, I'm not sure exactly, but like it's about 6 to 8 hours or something like that. 6 hours maybe. So Wolf Hall, for people that don't know much about it or whatever, is it's a series of books, like 3 books by Hilary Mantel, which was turned into a relatively short miniseries for that, for how big the books are and stuff. And it's centered on Thomas Cromwell and the English Reformation, who was like he was basically like an advisor to King Henry VIII and stuff, and got really deep into all the weeds with like, trying to basically scheme, kind of like a scheming kind of guy kind of thing. And he was a banker and all this kind of stuff. And
those bankers always up to no good.
Yeah. So it was very clear once I got to like episode 2 or 3 and stuff, that it was very clear that like what the motivation for writing the books was to some extent, or at least like the angle kind of thing. So there's this play in a movie, very famous movie. I think it might have won the Oscar or something like that. Like it won quite a bit for what it was, kind of thing, which was called A Man for All Seasons. Have you seen that or no?
Mm-mm.
So it's about Thomas More, and basically in the movie it's set up as like he's the ultimate man of principle. Like he's like like this. I was thinking of it as like an inverse Martin Luther or something. Like in history, Thomas More, he refuses to accept the fact that the king is now the supreme head of the church. He's like, no, that can't be true because it's the Pope, and he tries to sort of like keep himself out of trouble to some extent, but like, he tries to like work with the king on different things and like actually, like he's not like outright publicly being like, going on tirades against the king or something like that kind of thing. But like the issue is eventually kind of forced. They're kind of like, well, do you think he is the head of the church or whatever, that basically. And in the movie, he basically is like, no, I can't accept that. I'm sorry. That is just not true, kind of thing. Like, defending the Pope in England and stuff. And they execute him because of that. And so that movie and that kind of play was sort of like the inversion of the traditional English story of, this guy being an agent of Rome or any, like, it's like, I think, he was respected in terms of like some of his output, maybe like, some of his writings and stuff, but he was basically on the wrong side of history generally. So This movie and play, which was quite popular, sort of sets him up as a hero of principle and stuff like that kind of thing. So in the miniseries Wolf Hall, it like almost half of the thing is basically like a lot of the story is how much of a loser and idiot Thomas More is, kind of thing. Like it's sort of like flips the whole thing again, and makes him look like just cruel and scheming and an idiot, and sort of makes it seem like his ideas are not really well thought out, kind of in terms of like, he thinks of himself as this like brilliant theologian and stuff, obviously. And it's very clear in the movie, in the miniseries, that it's like if he gave a bit of ground and was a bit less of an idiot, he would have survived and stuff. And they don't like they go pretty far with that. Like they go pretty far with like making it so that like Thomas Cromwell, like basically there's a lot, like there's sort of like there's actual courtroom kind of scenes kind of thing of like setting it all up as we're going to get this guy kind of thing. We're going to trap him in his stupid ideas and kind of like make him, get executed and stuff. So there's like a long plot line of that kind of being like a main thing of like him getting set up. And not just that, but also sort of like once that happens kind of thing, obviously being part of his sort of like Thomas More's goal kind of thing, like that Thomas More is fine with being a martyr to some extent. Like he didn't think it would come to that maybe, but like he's sort of like okay with being a martyr because then he gets to like go to heaven and stuff kind of thing. He's like, oh, like it's like suicide by prot kind of thing. It's like, it's like, I stuck by the Pope kind of thing and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
So I know people that are Catholic and stuff that really don't like this series because it makes all the Catholics look like total idiots. Like just like,
I can understand that.
And there's always like Protestant stuff sort of happening in the background mostly, but like there's like maybe it's more in the book and stuff, but like it's Thomas Cromwell is personally Protestant and in his own beliefs kind of thing, and so he kind of sets up things where he's sort of like plotting to sort of get favor with the king and stuff to kind of protect some of his people and stuff like that a bit. So, and he's like supportive. He like accepts the fact that like, it's funny because he was, I'm not sure what the rank is. I think it was like Archbishop maybe or something, or Cardinal, I guess Archbishop. He was basically like working for this guy, like the one that was eventually like sort of kicked out of his office and stuff like that by Henry VIII and stuff. So there is like an arc as well of like him sort of getting back at people for, attacking his archbishop kind of thing. So that's part of it, but it's also, it's not like, basically like it's cynical about the Catholics and stuff, but it's also kind of cynical about the Protestants and cynical about like all the different, machinations of like, the royalty. Most of it is about like, the different women of Henry VIII and stuff, and how there are different plots and stuff, and how they all, basically everyone fails eventually at their plotting and stuff, except for Henry VIII to some extent. But like even Henry VIII seems like a bit of a crazy idiot in time and stuff and like that. So, so I thought that was interesting, but it's also like, just because it's cynical about Catholics and stuff, I don't think anyone comes off well. I don't think like everyone kind of seems like a schemer, and they only believe things as far as they can kind of get away with them. And they might have these ideas that kind of like they get like different religious ideas or political ideas or whatever, or like alliances and stuff that inform what they do. But most of the time when they cling to those, they end up kind of failing or something like that. Like it's, like Thomas More basically kills himself to some extent by caring too much about the Pope and stuff like that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's that's a big angle of it, is kind of it seems like it's just mess of like just different intrigue and stuff like that. So
sure. Did that feel justified or earned by the series, or did that feel like they were sort of just throwing it on top of you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that I think it is justified because it is like just an extreme. It depends on I think it depends on what you think that the point is, kind of thing, to some extent, because it's like one way of looking at it is like, oh, this is bad history times kind of thing, like it's all, these are when the monarchy was, supreme to some extent, and like all these like family intrigues and stuff like that. And you can kind of go, well, it's good we don't do it like that anymore. To some extent, you could say that. You could be like, well,
yeah,
we got rid of this Catholic background and all of this medieval stuff that eventually evolved into something a bit better, at least, and stuff.
Yeah. Now nobody schemes in politics anymore.
But that's the other thing, is that you can kind of say, well, then not much has changed and politics still works like this. It's all scheming and stuff, and whenever someone has an idea, it ends up kind of being part of their comeuppance and stuff. And I don't know. I feel like I think the best way to look at it, the most ideal way, is sort of like, I don't know. I think that you can kind of look at all of that and kind of accept it, and then kind of take a step back and go, but it's also maybe how history progresses, you know, to some extent. Maybe it's like, if you can also say like, I mean, if you're kind of sympathetic to the Protestant cause or something like that in this world, you could say like, well, it's all this intrigue and terrible stuff has a weird way of working out to some extent, because, you know, like the ideas and stuff like that and all the different intrigues seem to point at least towards changes that are benefiting people, like getting rid of the Pope's control of England and stuff like that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So the other thing is that it's funny is that there's something that I notice a lot, and there's like this prestige TV, mostly HBO, but like, you know, all of them do it, male anti-hero model, where they sort of set up all of the bad, like, like, you know, Don Draper is probably one of the most ideal versions of this, but Tony Soprano obviously was another one, and then Heisenberg or whatever from things where basically they create situations where a whole bunch of potential bad can happen. Everything looks kind of in peril, and basically the genius man, who is a bit evil, takes all of the stuff he's learned in the episode or whatever, or like the last little while, including bits of information or like some moral from like a personal relationship failure or something like that, and then invests it into the situation. And this creates a stunning reversal that shocks his or elates or whatever, you know, like just has a big effect on either his opponents or like, you know, the person that he's trying to convince or something like that. And you know, like in Mad Men, like Don Draper will do something like where he you know, will have like maybe some affair or something like that, and it goes wrong in a particular way, and then sometimes what happens in that failure is translated into an advertising idea, and then that advertising idea, you know, is like, damn it, Don, you done it again, kind of thing, right? So
yeah. And
so this is funny. It's funny because this is about, like, you know, the 1500s, whatever. It works the same way in this. Like he has all these different experiences, and there's so many moments in the miniseries, even though it's like only 6 hours long or something like that, right? Whatever, where he gets like it looks like everything he is gonna, you know, he's gonna get screwed. Basically, he's gonna get executed, or like some problem is gonna come up, you know, and then he has like a stunning reversal by, you know, some piece of information or something and stuff like that. And the thing is about him being a survivor. Like the whole show is about him basically coming up from pretty much nothing. Like his dad is a blacksmith and stuff like that, I think. And like he ends up, you know, rising from almost nothing, becoming a banker, and becoming the most trusted person that the king knows and stuff like that. So it's funny though, because, and I think this is true to some extent for Don Draper and all these other guys too, is that when we're watching this, we also know that from history times that Thomas Cromwell was executed eventually. So
right,
we know sort of who in this story is going to get killed, kind of thing. It's like, you know, it's a bit different from other ones where you just know someone is going to get killed or something like that. Like so in The Sopranos, people get whacked all the time and stuff like that, kind of thing. But like, it's different is that we sort of have in the back of our minds, okay, well, Thomas Cromwell gets killed eventually. You know, we know that the Queen gets killed eventually. We know that, you know, all different, like Thomas More, we know he gets executed and stuff. So we sort of have this in the back of our mind that we know it's going to happen. So that's always looming. But I think it's interesting because it fits it well, because we know that even though he's a survivor, there's no actual surviving that ends up happening, kind of thing. Like you're sort of meddling through life, kind of thing. You're getting all of you're working through your kind of problems and stuff like that. But you know you're not going to survive. You're not going to like come out on top, basically. You might survive for a while, but you're only setting yourself up for the ultimate fall. And then, so that's beyond, like, you know, the spoiler would be that at the very end of this this whole sequence, whatever, he has successfully gotten the queen executed for the king, basically, kind of thing, like set her up, basically. Everything has gone perfectly well for him, kind of thing. Like he's done everything that the king asked, kind of thing. And so the king is, you know, the last sequence is him walking into the king's kind of like quarters, whatever, being all like sort of like, hey, I did it, kind of thing, right? And then he sees the king in the distance, and the king opens his arms up wide and is like,
suicide bomb. Suicide vest.
But basically he's like opening up his arms wide, like, you did it for me, buddy, kind of thing, right? And it slows down, and the slowing down is obviously like he has like a kind of like an oh shit moment kind of thing, right? Because he's realized at this moment when he's kind of walking towards the king and stuff, I just killed myself by doing all of this, basically, right? Like every success that I had, this guy that is willing to kill his queen is going to kill me someday, basically, kind of thing. Like that's the sort of realization that you can kind of impute into his kind of like, you know, realizing that he's walking down. He kind of goes, oh, it's sort of like the end of, or like I thought of it as like in Goodfellas, where Joe Pesci walks into the room and he looks around and he gets shot, kind of thing. It's that kind of idea of like, you know, I've done all of this for this guy, and it's going to be my downfall, kind of thing. So I thought that was really well done. It's good, and the acting is really great. It's that's what I really like about it. I mean, it's TV, so I feel like TV always has that sort of like thing where it's like, it's always a bit cheesy. Like it's always a bit like over the top and kind of silly and stuff. And this is sort of has the like feeling of a play to some extent. And but I like it, you know. I don't know. I think it worked out okay. Like I don't know. I'm excited to read the books eventually, and I really find this period interesting because it is that like you know, just total like the reasons why we have certain institutions in different places today that are so like we just kind of accept as being normal. Like there's so many things that seem like were frozen into history at this point in time because of different political settlements becoming like, you know, the political settlements exploded and then kind of came back together. There's certain like institutions within the Anglican Church and stuff that were like, it could have gone either way really radically. And it's not like it's not obvious to me why. Like it's kind of like it seems to be very political. It seems to be very like, you know, like I mentioned it before, but like, you know, when they closed all the monasteries and stuff like that, it's like, well, you know, that could have gone either way. I don't know. Like that seems like a totally contingent fact that like affects millions of people's lives and stuff like that. So I don't know. Yeah. That's interesting to me.
I know what you mean. And that I find that very interesting as well. Tabs has been reading the book for like kind of on and off for a while. Yeah. And, yeah, you kind of piqued my interest there. I might check that out.
Yeah, it's like a big long series, I think. Like I'm pretty sure that the book is like 400, 500 pages. The Wolf Hall, the first one, there's 3 of them. So, but I'm not really sure what fills it out. I don't know. Like they were able to do the story pretty well, I think, in like a 6-hour miniseries. So I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows?
I don't know. Maybe it gets more into like the Protestant intrigue side of things, or like all that kind of stuff. Because a lot of the other people obviously are like leading theologians and stuff like that in it and stuff. So yeah.
Sometimes they combine like characters and plot lines and stuff.
Sure.
But given that it's historical, like maybe they wouldn't do that. I don't know. I guess people do that all the time with historical like period pieces and such.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So I, for my part, also have like a TV show that I watched this month, or last month. Copenhagen Cowboy was out on Netflix, and it was like a mini series or something, like a 8 episode season or something like that. And it was by the I always forget his name, but it's the guy that did Drive and all those movies. Like
Refn or something. Yeah, Rain or something. Yeah, Refn something. Yeah,
however you say it, I don't know. But yeah, so that I thought that was pretty cool. It kind of like I mean, you know his style, right? Like he has a very particular sort of style and everything that he tends to have, and this is like really turning that up, I think, as far as it can go. And it's cool. Like I think it works pretty well. I think the format actually suited the story and suited everything really well in a way that kind of made me think of these like mini seasons and mini series that you sometimes get on streaming. Sometimes they don't work well, right? Like sometimes it's very clear that this is just a movie that they're stretching out or whatever. Yeah. This one seemed like he knew what he was doing, like by making it this length. Like it would have been too compact and compressed as a movie, but it's good that it also wasn't like a super long, like season after season after season. I mean, I guess they could do that, but I thought this worked as a standalone thing. The pacing of it is really like slow and hypnotic, and that really works very well with the whole format. Mm-hmm. And you really just kind of get immersed in the world that he creates, which is a very strange one. It's about these Serbian Albanian gangsters that run like a brothel, or like have this like, yeah, I guess it's like a brothel basically that they run. And so there's like the head gangster guy and then his wife, and the wife is into like witchy folk stuff, you know, like they basically invite the character who becomes like the main character, who's like this witchy lady who, you know, can bring good luck or whatever is how they term it. So she's always just sort of like silently and expressionless, you know, just staring at people and that kind of thing. Has like a intimidating aura or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it's just about her like misadventures with these people, and yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit. Cool. I don't want to like say too much about all the plot and all that kind of stuff, but yeah, I mean, if you like his movies, this and all that kind of stuff, like I think this is highly recommended.
I haven't actually seen Drive yet or any of those, I don't think, so I should check them out. But yeah,
I feel like there's another director I always confuse him with, but then I'm always not sure if I'm imagining that there's two directors or not. Yeah. I don't know. I haven't like looked into that too much.
Sure.
But yeah, I can't even remember the other movies he did. Didn't he do like a Batman movie or something? Did he do the most recent Batman one? Yeah. See, this is what I mean. No, I think I'm confusing him with another guy.
Okay. Fair enough.
Anyway, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So I watched The Last of Us. I watched the first episode of that, I guess. Kind of.
Oh yeah.
And
okay.
I had tried the game, and I got to like, I realized now in the game, like from the TV show, I realized that from the game, I must have turned it off after like 5 minutes or something. There's no way I played more than 5 minutes. I still have it. I should keep it. Like I should try again and stuff. I think there's like a remastered version or something like that. I could probably upgrade for cheap or something.
Yeah,
so.
and I know for sure they have that easy mode.
Oh, they do. Like. Okay.
Yeah.
So, how do you know that? Just, you know,
I played through the whole game. And
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and I remember seeing that setting there.
Sure. Do you like it, or how did you like the game?
It was fine. It was good.
Do you normally play zombie games and all that kind of stuff, or no?
No, not really. I was house sitting when I played this game, so it was just sort of like something to do, and it kept me occupied. It was fine. It felt like a lot of type of games where it's a lot of stealth and kind of the fake open world where it's like, oh, it's how do I get around this barrier? Oh, I guess I need to use this plank of wood and jump on this thing. And
oh, really?
You know, it's okay. It's fine.
So is most of it set in like past, like in the future kind of thing? Is it, or like in the, I guess like in the, like, is like, you know how there's like the apocalypse kind of like moment kind of thing where like like the virus, whatever, or the fungus, whatever spreads.
Yeah.
Is there like a step after, like, do they just go directly from that into like the sort of game world or something like that, or is there like
I remember it being
and
pretty.
stuff?
I remember it being pretty linear, and maybe there's like a gap from the very beginning to like the first sort of, like they do an intro sequence, which you don't really play much. You're just kind of like more watching it,
Yeah,
where you kind of see everyone panic and try to escape a town or something like that.
I thought
maybe there's a gap of time there, but I remember it being fairly linear in terms of you just kind of progress.
There is, I think there is a gap. There is a gap in the TV show at least, and I thought that it was just all like Survivor kind of stuff, like for the moment, from the initial kind of wave kind of thing.
I wonder if you didn't even finish that intro sequence.
I didn't finish it. I don't think. I think I got pretty. Yeah. And then, so I thought that it was just all that basically, and I was like, I don't care about this. I don't know. I don't want to like just. Maybe I'll give it another shot because I thought that like that was the whole game. It was just like running around trying to survive an apocalypse, and I don't care enough about zombie stuff. There's a lot of stuff that like I don't know now. It's not that I have like a negative attitude towards it. It's just like I can focus on something else kind of thing or something. Like it's like I don't need to have that in my life kind of thing. And zombie stuff is big on the list for that for me. Like it's like I'll watch like the movies that are like the top movies about it or something like that and enjoy them maybe, but like I don't need like I don't know. It's not I don't know. So maybe I'll give it another shot. So but the actual movie, I mean the TV show they made of it, there's like I don't know, it like this now that I'm sort of like into the actual show part of it kind of thing, it's like actually like what their plan is and stuff and all that. It's better because it's just basically like it's just like a normal TV show that like happens to have some zombie stuff in it, I guess, kind of thing. Like I don't care about the zombie stuff. I don't find it like interesting or that like the fighting and around that kind of stuff. It doesn't. Yeah, there's no.
It's incidental.
Yeah,
to the zombies.
And so that seems fine. But like it's weird because they do a few things. Like one is that they have like an intro sequence for the show where there's like a 1960s or something like that, like TV show kind of thing where it's like like they're debating whether or not there could be like pandemics in the future or something like that kind of thing. And then one of the guys is like, funguses can actually take over people's brains and make them like fight or something like that. Kind of, it's very like on the nose. And it's also like it's obviously inserted because they tested the show and people were probably like, it's a fungus or something like that kind of thing. Like they were probably like making fun of that and like in the focus groups and stuff, or at least like that was like the producer note or something. They were like, no, we got to make some sort of scene in this that I don't know if it's in the actual game. I don't think so. And it's like we got to like insert a scene at the start that like makes people buy into the idea that it's a fungus doing it or something, Mm-hmm. And I thought that's probably the laziest way to do it, but there's probably no other way. If it was inserted after, they probably had to do that, you know what I mean, to like to like actually put it into the show, because they couldn't just rewrite the show around people talking to each other about how fungus works or something like that kind of thing. So they just threw that on. I thought that was kind of like a bad sign kind of thing to me, that like that's how it opens. And then they have like about the actual, I checked when you actually get to the point where like there's like zombies and stuff going on kind of thing, like there's actually like fighting and all that kind of stuff, and it's 20 minutes into the first episode, which again is kind of like, okay, like I don't need all of this stuff. I don't know, like there's a lot of other stuff in it, just kind of like trying to get people emotionally bought into it kind of thing, and I think that's fine, but it's like don't kid yourself a bit kind of thing, like it's kind of like you're a zombie show. I know you're spending a lot of money on this. That's honestly the reason why I watched it, was because they spent like $100 million or something like that or more on it, and it's just a TV show. Really? So they spent like an enormous amount of money because they really want to make this video game stuff work for HBO. Like they really want like crossover movies and stuff, and
that makes sense. Yeah.
And so they put like a huge amount of money into it. And I thought, well, if they did that, then it's got to be at least like competent in the basics, probably. Like it's like for HBO, I already trust HBO to some extent because they're pretty good. And then I thought, you know, with the money and like the attention and stuff like that, it's probably good. So the actual show from this point on is okay, kind of thing. It's like, it's fine. I like that it's like a post-apocalyptic world and stuff where there's like an American military dictatorship and stuff like that. I don't know. I think that's cool. It's sort of like neat to see them working jobs and like having like these little ration coupons and all that kind of stuff. I like that kind of stuff. But like seeing like the weird fungus stuff on people and stuff, whatever. It's not like, you know, I don't buy into all that so side stuff. So I'll see how it goes. I know that like the big controversy right now is that like, not controversy, but kind of like a silly thing is that like the third episode has like a gay love story kind of thing. It's like a big thing. And they were sort of like, the way that they kind of framed it was I had to sort of trick people into watching a gay love story, which is, I don't know if that's the way that you want to frame that. I don't know.
That's, I could really care less about all that, but it does sort of, I don't know if it bothers me is the right way to phrase it, but I understand why people hate this stuff and say, oh, they're shoving it down our throats and all. Like, they kind of are. Like, is sort of, they do shoehorn it in there. It's always really awkward and like, oh, does this bother you? You find this threatening or what? It's just like, relax. Like, put your stupid gay stuff in the movie if you want it, if it makes sense, whatever. If you just put it in there and left it alone, no one would care. It's just like, you know, people do a lot of stuff about like, oh, we want female heroes who aren't like, you know, ladylike. Like they can be heroic and blah, blah, blah too, right? I mean, they've been doing that forever and they didn't make a big stink about it and nobody really took it. Like, I don't know. I think it's just the bad faith of like, oh, we're not trying to do anything. And then just being very overtly presenting it a certain way is just, I don't know. It's just like, drop the act. Who are you fooling here?
For me, I think my angle on it is kind of like, well, it is so normal to me in my mind. Like it is so accepted in my mind that the fact that it's like somehow controversial makes me think that maybe they don't think it's right. Or something like that kind of thing. Like it's like, you see, we're doing a gay love story, and it's like, yeah, okay, that's that's fine. Like, why is that controversial? Like, why are you making it into this big thing? Like, why are you? And I think that's true to some extent with the female superhero kind of thing, where it's like you seem a little bit too invested in this idea. There's something going on there. There's something, I don't know. Although that's you know, fine. If you're really excited about that, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. It's just not very interesting. Like if that becomes the focus of the show or the movie, it's boring. Like it's not challenging. It's not interesting to just be like, look, this is some gay people. Check it out. We got gays. We got gays over here. Like, okay, guys, whatever. Can we get back to the whatever the show is? Yeah, I think that. And it's the funny thing is that it actually does work to some extent in terms of like, I don't know. I always think of like Lil Nas X, like that guy, like he did like a demon kind of thing or something, like the different like some sort of music video where he was sort of like worshiping the devil or like, you know, enticing the devil. He was twerking on the devil or something like that. So you know, they did that. And it's like lowest level, bottom basement trying to like trigger the conservatives kind of thing. Like it's just very, very silly. Now, it's almost so silly that it's like kind of funny that would actually like that. It's just very, very corny. Like it's just silly. But it also works kind of thing. Like you see all the conservatives like leaning into it and being like, oh my God, I can't believe they're allowing people to watch this and stuff. Like they actually are acting as if, but I feel like, didn't all this happen like 20 years ago? How are people still doing this? Exactly. Like how are we like still on this narrative kind of thing? Like Ellen's Kiss TV episode, I think was like mid 90s or something like that. That was probably the last time, and it was still kind of like a stretch where like can you believe it? Gay people are on television, kind of thing. I don't know. Like that to me, that's what it seems like. Like how is that still a narrative or something like that? Where it's like people are like, can you believe it? There's gay people on television. It's maybe that's true, and if it's true, it's pretty sad. It's pretty like something's wrong there. That it's been that long, and we can still have that as a major selling point for a TV series or something.
Well, I think like both political camps benefit from that, like conservatives obviously benefit in the sense of, it's like a boogeyman for them, right?
Yeah.
And liberals, or whatever you want to call it, the other side, they kind of like, we have to look how progressive we are. Like it's kind of like a way to puff themselves up as being like cutting edge and revolutionary and this and that and stuff, when they're really just doing like stuff that's probably market tested very thoroughly, and it's like a very safe bet financially to do this. So they're just like, we just kind of keep playing this angle up. So both sides kind of pretend that this is some real thing when it's been kind of, there's a reality that precedes this going back 20 years or so.
Sure.
But if we just kind of pretend that it's still 1985 or whatever, then both camps kind of get to play their thing.
Sure.
And I think there's also an element of people want their media to be like political propaganda for their side. Yeah. They don't even care about like it's almost like secondary any of the artistic kind of virtues or elements of the thing. The main thing is that there's like an ideology or an ideological message that they agree with and is very clear and is going to, like, they imagine it. I think they imagine it being like conveyed to these masses of people and everyone being convinced by it because of like that seems to be an increasing priority for some audiences, and that's probably a small number of people compared to just people who just want to watch stuff, but they're very vocal online, and they are very like, they just have an ability to kind of like make news, make like clicky things, like people stuff that people are it gets people's attention and stuff. So
although
that's annoying though. I hate that. I like that. That's really dumb in my opinion.
Although I do think it's also true that like the stuff we're talking about more is really targeted a lot of the time towards our sort of like range of like demographic kind of thing. Most TV, if you turn it on, most TV is like The Masked Singer, like, or like,
it's
like
true.
NCIS and all those kind of shows. Like it's like so I get if that's what you're think is most TV and what people are actually watching, then maybe like watching an HBO show does seem a bit subversive to you or something like that. But yeah, like, I mean, I have no interest in, like, people say that like Succession is well done and stuff like that, or, stuff like that. And I can't, I don't know. I distrust it at some level. Those kind of like a lot of these shows that are like, oh, did you know that like rich people, like, I worry that that's what people are getting out of some of those things, like, are just that it's just like base level pandering kind of stuff. So I don't know.
That's exactly what it is, I think. And I think a lot of the chatter about that stuff is artificial. I think it's a lot of people in the same sort of circles as the people who made the show kind of promoting each other, and they kind of, people, journalists or whatever, like they all kind of, I don't know. I think you get what I'm saying.
So, we could go another half hour on that ranting kind of stuff, but so we'll wrap it up there for today, I think, and if that's good. And
sounds good to me. Yeah, happy to get these episodes out for the people. We got to get our own political propaganda out there.
Sure. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, thanks for listening, guys, and we'll talk to you next week, I guess. We'll see. Okay. Bye.
Yep. See ya.